Hello and welcome to my video on weak auras. Today we're going to talk about weak auras, what they are, what you can do with them, and let's be honest here, if you do the weak auras like this, if you make your own, they will be the best weak auras. Everyone will know it, you will win bigly, and honestly, they will be much better than any of the weak auras that you can download from China, So anyway, that was a horrible Trump, but you get the idea. Let's get started here. So we'll start off with just what are weak auras? What can they do? So you can go to the Weak Auras website and download the add-on, or go to CurseForge and get add-ons that way. However you get add-ons, get this add-on. So the Weak Aura add-on does so many great and very useful things, and is probably one of the most important add-ons to have, other than something like DBM or Little Wigs or Big Wigs. So just as in a couple examples here, you can see that this weak aura is a 30-minute rare spawn timer. So what this will do is it'll sit down here, and you can have this turn on whenever you want. I have it turned off because I don't hunt rares right now. But basically, it'll show you whenever a rare is about to spawn, how much time, where it's going to spawn, and it just follows the set rotation. And they use custom code to do that. If you're familiar with Lua, then you'd actually probably be able to parse through this and understand what they're doing in here. I'm not going to go that in depth to it, but you can actually go into here and you can mess with all kinds of stuff. And it's good for if you're looking to farm rares to get sparks and stuff. But some other ones include things like this for raids. So for like Taros, back when we cared about splitting up the pillars, you would get an automatic mark assigned to you if you got the debuff, saying that you were going to spawn a pillar on that fight. And if you were even, you would go to one side. If you were odd, you would go to the other. And it just made things a little bit easier for you. Same thing with this tracker. This is a thing that will show, it basically has you call out what your symbol is, either your plus or minus. And it's very, very useful for getting everybody in the raid on the same page, to make it so that it's very obvious where you need to go. It's not a requirement. Obviously, if you have a brain and you can, look at everything, then yeah, you should be able to do without the weak aura. But the weak auras just make things that much easier, so that you can focus on doing your rotation stuff without having to worry about, every other myriad of mechanics. I mean, honestly, the boss fights these days have gotten so complicated compared to the old ones that, like, you kind of start to need stuff like this. And I won't go into the philosophical details and the arguments about, do we need stuff like this in raids? Is this good or not? I'm just saying this is what we have, so if you want to use it, use it. But some more examples. Interrupt Tracker, this is an awesome one for Mythic Plus. This will show you it'll show you everybody else's weak aura, or everybody else's interrupts, what interrupt they have, how much time is left on the cooldown for it. And it's very useful for when you're in a group and you have comms and you can say, hey, you do yours and then you do yours and I'll do mine, and yada yada yada. So it's very useful and a great add-on to have, or a great weak aura for this add-on. And you can also make your own, but here's another one I downloaded for another example. So this one's the Dragon Writing UI. There are a few different flavors of this one, but I like this one because it gives you this top bar here, tells you your actual speed and percentage of how fast you're going, and then this bar here is your acceleration. So if it's right here, that means if it's in the middle, it means you're not accelerating anymore. If it's below the bar, it means you're decelerating, and if it's above it, it means you are accelerating. And then these are your essence bubbles, obviously. And it's a little bit different, you have to kind of get used to it. But it's a great way to help with the races if you don't understand exactly, how things work. Because, tipping down will only give you so much speed. And that's when you need to, flap or use something like Skyward Ascent, because that will help you get your speed up faster. Because, using that maxes out speed instantly. So, a very useful one to have as well. And now we can talk about things like the ones that I made for myself, for example. So this is kind of my, my heads-up display that I've created for myself. Obviously, this one doesn't show up all the time. It only shows up when I need to actually use Death Strike. And I have that set, so basically if my runic power is above 100, it's telling me, hey, you need a Death Strike because you're about to overcap on runic power, right? So very useful stuff here, and instead of having to look up here or mess with this or having to download ElvUI or do one of those other total UI conversions, you can just do stuff like this and have all your cooldowns sitting here. Now, without other add-ons, you can't make these buttons clickable, but you can make them, useful just by existing. So I'm a big fan of them, and I've screwed up the alignment of them, so now I'm going to have to fix that. There we go, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So, that being said, let's walk through how do we make weak auras that are useful? What are some useful weak auras that we can create? Well, so a lot of people like my healer videos, so I'll show you a good one for healers that I think would be very helpful when you're healing, say, a Blood Death Knight like myself. So if you've ever healed a Blood Death Knight in a dungeon or in a raid, you know the pain of casting a heal that gets off right as the Death Knight just suddenly pops back up to full health, right? And you might be wondering, like, well, how do I know when they're going to have runic power? How do I know when they're going to be able to heal themselves? Well, if they have runic power, they're going to be able to heal. So a good way to track that, and I put it in the wrong spot here. Let me get that out of the way. We'll just try to find like an empty spot here. There we go. So we'll do a progress bar because that's a good element to use for any kind of bar, essentially. And we'll call this DKRP, right? Very simple. You can come into the display options here under that tab, and you can change colors. Runic power is typically like this bluish color, so we'll just make it that color. We will look at, you can change settings, you can change size. You can also change size by, just dragging the corners, the little handles here, and making it whatever size you want. You can change fonts, you can change when it shows up or what it's attached to. If you wanted to attach this to, let's say, you want to attach it to like a health bar or something, anchored to, you can go into that and you can say, select a frame, choose, and then you can click whatever frame you want to attach it to, and it'll be tied to that frame. I don't necessarily want it there. I could tie it to anything, I guess. I could tie it to my details meter here, and it can be right there. It doesn't matter where you want to be, and it'll just be attached to that. But I'm going to unlock it and just have it tied to the screen or the parent group, whatever. So now, how do we make this useful? Because as it is, it's just going to sit here and it doesn't have anything. It just sits inside of the destroyer, whatever that is. So what you need to do is you come into the trigger, and the trigger is basically what your weak aura is looking at. So in the case of you wanting to look at some player resources, you'll go to something like player unit info, and then you can go into power, and power can be really any resource that players have, like mana, insanity, whatever the shadow priests use these days. It could be like chaos shards, it could be rage, fury, whatever you want it to be. And you would also want to change this to party. You could change this to something like a specific player, which this would be yourself, or you could change it to smart group, which could be, it depends on the group, so that if you have somebody in the group, it'll show it. If not, it won't show up. You could specify a specific person, or you could specify the target, but in this case, we'll just say party because simple, right? If you did smart group, I think you can actually go with specialization. So you know what, let's just do that. Let's say specialization, and they have to be blood DK, because that would be the most sensible thing, right? You also want to check power type, and we'll pick runic power. So that being said, all we gotta do now is close this, and you'll see the weak aura automatically updates here, and it's got my name, plus it's got how much runic power I have. I can use Arcane Torrent to generate some runic power, and you'll see it tracks with my actual runic power, and there it is, very simple. And if I were to switch to a different spec, which will take all of a couple seconds, cool. Some of my talents change, whatever. You see the bar is now gone because I'm not a Blood Death Knight, so that bar doesn't need to load. Very simple. And when I switch back to blood, there it is. So a couple other things that I also typically will do when I'm making a weak aura is specify the load options. So I don't typically need you wouldn't need this up if you weren't in combat, so I would typically check in combat for a lot of these. So, that bar will pop up when I'm in combat only. You could also specify, like, you only want it to show up when you're in a party or in a raid, or you could do both. You could check that twice, and then you'll be able to check both those boxes, or you check it once and it goes away. So you check one time, check two, and you'll get more options. That works on some of these it doesn't. And that's pretty much it for just a basic, use for weak auras. There's a couple other ideas or things that you can do with them. I'll give you another example of, ones that I use that make sense, and a couple other options you can specify. So down here on this bar, I actually have my bone shield set up, and my bone shield is set up so that essentially I always will have, it's always going to be there when I'm in combat, but specifically I want the condition to be, I want it to do something to remind me to keep my bone shield up if either the time is running out or if the stacks are getting low. So I have my trigger here, which is obviously, exact spell ID, which this is that. You could specify the spell name here, but it's a little bit easier just to go into Wowhead, and you can find, if you look up a particular buff or ability, you can click the link button on the page, and it'll give you the spell ID. And sometimes that's the better option to use, but you can do it in many different ways. But the other way, other thing you can do here is go into conditions, and this is where you specify what conditions you want to happen before it does a thing, essentially. So for this particular thing, like I said, the condition is if my stacks are less than 3, it'll play a sound which will have me a voice that says idiot. Because clearly I'm an idiot if I'm not keeping my stacks up. Same thing with the duration. If the remaining duration is less than 10 seconds, it will also play a sound to remind me, hey, you're an idiot. Update your bone shield. And that's pretty much it. That's a good way to make some general weak auras just to help you keep on top of some of the things you need to do. And, sometimes things can get hectic, and it's nice to have a little nudge to remind you to do certain things. You can also go into the actions for particular weak auras, and you can have it do various different things depending on what's going on. And really, you can just play around with these, and there's so many things you can do with the weak auras, like I was saying. Another quick example I'll give you for making a weak aura. Let's say you wanted to do something like I have here with the icons, where it shows you, what your cooldowns are or what a particular skill is doing. You can just make an icon here, and we'll just call it IBF for Icebound Fortitude. And the trigger will be a spell, and we'll say action usable. So you've got a lot of different options here as to when this will trigger. I just have it for this. When the action is usable, it will show up. I'll move this out of the way. And you'll notice it doesn't show an icon or anything yet. You can actually come into here and choose, like if I said Icebound, I could just find the icon here, but you don't need to do that. As long as you type in the skill here or the spell in the box here, it'll pop up. You don't even have to do it case sensitive or anything, just spell it correctly. And it'll automatically put the right name on it, and it'll be sitting there just like that. Now, if you wanted to track some other things, for example, you wanted to know what the cooldown is, you could just put it here on this cooldown charges count, and it'll do a little swipe, and it will tell you when it will be available. And we'll say the load here should just be there. So in this case, it's only going to show up when it's on cooldown. So you can actually change that so that it always is visible by going into the options here. So just have it check always. There we go. So you just go into that, and you can have it show that it always shows no matter what. And if I were to use Icebound Fortitude, it'll now sit here and show me the cooldown along with the time for how long it's going to be till it's available. And you can do all kinds of different stuff to play with that. You can change the text, you can change the way the button looks. Like I said, you can just click and drag and move stuff around. One of the things that I find useful, if I'm going to try to, I'm kind of OCD with making some of the stuff, so I tend to just use the actual numbers. If I want to make the icon, make sure it's square, I'll come in here to position settings and set the height and width to exactly the same. That way I know it's 100% square. The other thing you can do, if you're trying to, if you got a bunch of, icons set up like I have, say you've got 2 of these, and that's another thing here, is if you're only seeing a couple, or if you're only seeing one of something and you want to see all of the things that are there, you have to check this little eyeball icon so that it becomes visible, or else it'll be hidden unless you actually click on it. But anyway, let's say that you wanted to, get these to be right next to each other and line them up perfectly, but you don't want to have to, do this or mess around with trying to put it in the right spot. The best way to do that is to make sure that magnetically align is clicked or checked, or highlighted, I guess, in this case. And then you can just come over here and then you basically line it up so that these yellow lines are in spot or are in line with each other here. And then it'll click, or it'll snap right to the other icon. And that's pretty much it. Very simple, easy way to put some things together. So that's pretty much the bare bones of it. There's so much more you can do with this. You can make all kinds of useful weak auras where you can create like a consumables icon to remind you to use your potions. There's even this one here. This is called Death Strike Prediction. It's a very useful one that I found. It'll actually have this little line, this little tick mark here, and that will show up on my health bar here depending on how much I'm about to heal with a Death Strike. And I didn't create that one myself. I actually copied that from another weak aura, and then I just added that onto mine. So now I have that, and I modified it a little bit, obviously, so that it was going to be the way I wanted it. But, it's nice because you don't have to reinvent the wheel with all of these. You can go to the Weak Auras website, which is wago.io, and you can find all these different Weak Auras. Just download them, take a look at them, and you can use those to learn how to make stuff that you want to make for yourself. So best way to do it is just start playing around with it, experiment with it. If you don't want to make your own, just go to the website and download some. But if you ever find, you're in a pinch and you need to make something, just do this, and you can really get a lot done with these little weak auras and just with these very powerful but simple to use tools here. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a little something. If you got any things you want me to add, or you think I should have covered more in depth, feel free to throw that in the comments. If you got some questions, put those in the comments too. Why not? If you hated my Trump accent, well, bucko, that's a hell of a thing that you have to say. And honestly, I can't disagree with you. Sometimes these voices suck. I mean, even my Jordan Peterson is horrible. But truth be told, I'm going to clean my room now, and that requires me to pick up a cross and bear it, and probably also see some lobsters while I'm at it. So until the next time, like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Maybe I'll become Irish. Who knows? It's hard to say. Either way, until next time, try not to die.